Welcome back to Age of Wonders 4. In this tips and tricks video, I'm going to share with you something new. Whether you're a beginner or an emerging expert, there are some tips and tricks for everybody in this video, and we'll explore some of the more creative game mechanics too. Before we begin, we are nearing our next subscriber target of 60,000. We're surging there at the moment. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's roll. We're going to start by talking about sieging it like you mean it. City sieges are obviously very important, not just for a domination victory, but for taking the enemy down a notch and maybe securing something valuable yourself. You'll start, of course, with 2 siege project slots by default, and you'll be able to unlock, as I have done here, a lot of additional projects to use throughout various tomes of magic. The thing is that these projects can really make or break it. So how can we bring more of them in? Well, there are a few different ways. To name a couple, the key ones, you're going to want to look at the development tree. Siege specialization is something anybody can get, granting you 1 additional siege slot. You can use this one time only. If you happen to be moving down the material line though, more of an Imperium kind of guy, then Siege Masters will also benefit you. It'll make the projects cost less gold and mana, and you'll have 1 additional slot. Now as you move through to take on perhaps a slightly threatening siege, not only will everything be a little bit cheaper, so you'll be able to bring in your 5 extra units or 6 extra units, your hounds, your onagers, everything to pull you above that traditional 18 unit cap, but you'll be bringing a lot of extra strength along with you as well. It can seriously make or break games, and it should be a fundamental deciding factor. Moving on to my next item, I want to talk about changing tiles. It's basically free real estate. We're changing them for almost nothing, and there are a lot of hidden benefits in doing it. So as you expand, of course, each population you gain will grant you a new tile. That's probably already familiar. Take note, at the moment in Tutorialville, I'm not currently producing anything. My slot is completely open. I can build what I like. I don't, however, have a lot of farms going at the moment. I'm a little bit short, and they're one of the key improvements to get some of the boosted buildings online, particularly as I move through into the later game. I'm starting to need more of a certain one, more farms, more foresters. What I could do then is look in and say, okay, well look, I've got far too many foresters, I just didn't need all of these. This tile is grassland and forest, so I can do more than just build a forester. By hitting down the bottom here, I can convert it into a farm. It'll take 3 turns. Okay, kinda sucks. But the beauty of this is that it doesn't take up anything from the city. And by that I mean we can keep on building structures here. The tiles operate independently. They also operate independently from each other, so if you've been pillaged, like I have here, by the way, make sure you check every now and again, you can roll through and repair as many of these as you like at a 50 coin cost and 3 turns. We can also use this to terraform minus the magic. Sounds a little bit cryptic, I know, but bear with me because it's kind of fun, and it also makes use of these special province improvements that are unlocked as you move through. Of course, you'll need to get them if you want to win the magic victory, for example, with something like the Seed of Materium, but the Sanctuary and others can be unlocked through tomes. You'll unlock many of them throughout the game, and you might not build them very often. Here, though, we're going to do something a bit special with this tile, this quarry tile that simply rocks. The only thing I can build on this is a quarry. You'll see I have no option to change it whatsoever. However, unlike this tile, where I can build basically whatever I like because it's every piece of geography under the sun, these rocks aren't providing. So if I head into my city and move to the special projects, like, for example, the Golem Mine, which counts as a mine, by the way, not a quarry, I can place it down here. On this previously only quarryable, somewhat useless tile, I've queued up a golem mine. I can of course hurry the production, I'm going to do that here for the sake of our time, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, I figured out a way to get a different type of improvement, and of course the extra yield that goes with it. Moving along to my next item is that outposts are also kind of free money. This one is slightly more self-explanatory than the rest, but it's really worth going over. We can place outposts almost wherever we like, and almost infinitely. They only cost us a little bit of upkeep, a little bit of cash. But we can easily make that back. This one here is doing it by grabbing onto this gold. But of course I've also very carefully settled on these haste berries, these special magic materials that are far more useful. In fact, they're probably the most useful tiles on the map outside of wonders. They themselves provide great yield, and of course they provide some hidden benefits too, as well as the tile improvements, right? These outposts are almost guaranteed to pay for themselves, so long as you're not just placing them in the middle of nowhere and you're picking up some sweet magic. And of course, don't forget, while we're talking about magic materials, you can check them up the top here at any time, you can also get the complete collection effect for getting 3 of the same type. Moving on to my next tip and trick. This one's about race traits. Now, I haven't talked about these in any tier list yet, although I have made a few of those, it would be fair to say. Apologies. But let's talk about them a little bit here. Things like quick reflexes, 30% harder to be hit by ranged attacks. So good. Compares much better, I would say, to the generally useful strong and tough. Or, of course, you could choose to pick up a mount, so long as you're using a single-handed weapon. These can be a reasonable way to pick up extra abilities early. As you move through to the mind trait, overwhelm tactics can be brilliant here, but there's some other things to keep in mind too. Tenacious is also equally as strong, but you might also want to factor in, say, the culture that you're choosing, because some of these things interlace incredibly well, right? Overwhelm tactics really leans into that kind of tome of the horde, perhaps nature, feudal, especially feudal, to overwhelm the enemy and stand next to each other. Or ferocious here, which really combos well with chaos and retaliation attacks. Keep that in mind as you structure your traits. The 6th item on my list is the Rally of the Lieges mechanic, and you really ought to make the most of this early. Here you can see on turn 64, I have basically nothing to offer, and I've out-tiered these units. Why? We'll get to that in a minute, and we'll also have a look now at the strength of doing it early. So how can I bring in extra stronger units? Well, I could hook up wonders like the ancient wonder that I've done here. There are also events potentially that could lead into it, as well as, of course, crucially, our city-states like Skorheim next to me here. As you can see at this game, on simply turn 12, I'm already gaining access to units that are just as strong, if not slightly stronger than mine, and these ogres from the Ancient Wonder. It's a great way to pick up extra units. They could very well be stronger than what you've got early, and they tend to be pretty cheap as well. $75 to get it into my capital. And the final item on my list, and this one, is making creative use of game mechanics, so forewarning, let's have a look. We're going to want to set our player distance to close, and the number of players to 2 on a realm. You could also choose to customize other things. You could choose, perhaps, to keep it only as land. You might also want to remove the underground, make it small. You could also look to remove free states, remove those city-states, just to get them out of the way. And all of this will make sense in a minute. When it comes to selecting who we want to play, you could choose to play as the default one here, because it has this Shadow Walkers. Or you could create your own. There are a couple of other extra things to add in. We'll figure out some of those as we go, but Shadow Walkers is really the key thing here for our extra scout and our ability to see far and wide. When we start, we'll want to zoom out, try and figure out where the enemy is. They're likely to be opposite us, so in this case, I'm thinking they're probably going to be to the top right. Now it's as simple as sending out our scout, our army, and completely ignoring the rest of the game. Cycle through your turns, send your units out, and even with this relatively basic version of the setup, within 4, 5, sometimes even fewer turns, we will have achieved our cheesy goal. And here it is. I've met the one and only enemy on the map. As soon as I meet them, I'm going to do something you probably don't often want to do, start negotiating and declare a war without justification. Straight away, we're at war. And just like that, straight away, we're going to negotiate, and I'm going to say, I want to become a vassal. It's a deal. And just like that, the game is over. Because there were only ever 2 players, and we've formed an alliance. So it's a domination victory to my opponent, or my sweet overlord, I should say. Now, why are we doing this, and why is it a cheesy, creative use of game mechanics? Well, for winning a game, we get a Pantheon point, because we were, after all, victorious. and we can use those to get sweet unlocks, like the traits, by the way. This one here, Silver-Tongued, could be even more useful for repeating this, starting with an additional extra scout. It's important to note that these traits, that they're hidden throughout the tree. Some of them, 2 of them down the bottom right here, can only be unlocked through the tree, so you might want to use that if you don't like actually just playing the game. But hey, you do you. I promised you creative use of game mechanics, and there we go, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today in this tips and tricks video. We've covered everything from ancient wonders to sieges, to swapping and repairing tiles, or terraforming without the use of magic, and rallying our lieges as we go. As one final tip here as I walk away from the video, if you want to take over a powerful wonder early or with crappy armies, you can always send one in first as cannon fodder, and then send another one in to mop up the AI, and get the sweet, sweet rewards / tile underneath. Thank you so much for joining me again, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next Age of Wonders video. So long as you enjoy the content, I'll continue to produce it. See you next time.